For those of you who have Amazon Prime, you can watch an Amazon original series called The Man in the High Castle. I started watching a couple of years ago when the series was new, and the final season was still not finished. I have since finished it, and it focuses on the family of John Smith. John Smith and his wife and their son and daughters are in an alternate timeline where the Nazis won the war, won World War II, and ended up conquering with the Japanese the United States. So there's a big neutral zone, and then there's the Japanese Pacific States and the Nazi American Reich. So everybody who was in the war was inculcated into the Nazi regime. And as a result, the America that we know is in this reality an America of nightmares, where there are more concentration camps, there's more horrors that are just absolute nightmares. Now, what John Smith realizes is that he runs into a problem when the more zealous he becomes enforcing the Nazi rule, he faces a difficulty. A little bit of a spoiler here. His son doesn't survive from the first season, and his son is found to have a defect physically that results in his having to be exterminated. But instead of being zealous and continuing on, John Smith and his wife and their family begins to unravel, and they begin to question the values of purity. And of course, this series illustrates the point. The harder you pull, the harder you focus on something, the bigger the problem becomes. For those of you who struggle with any sort of ailment or problem that you feel like you are up against, you'll make it all the worse by focusing on it. It's the same thing with any problem that you have. You get to a point of diminishing returns. You get to a point where you've handled something so much that more thinking about it, more struggling is going to make it worse. How many of you have a junk drawer in your house? You have a room that you just kind of throw stuff in. I know I do. Some of you have maybe just a junk drawer, a drawer where you put all those receipts and manuals and warranty instructions, and you just leave it there, and then 7 or 10 years later when you go to move, you throw it out in the trash because you realize you collected a bunch of stuff that you don't use. Well, of course, that drawer and that room serves a purpose. A healthy person has some level of clutter. A healthy person has some addictions. A healthy person has some vices and things that are not particularly good, but they make peace with them and they keep them in check. It used to be in the old days, in the 30s through like maybe the 60s, a police officer did what was called community policing, and admittedly they got better at it, but they used to go and have an arrangement with all of the criminals. We'll guard less over here, but you're going to leave our stuff alone. And as a result, the town had much, much lower crime, even in the big cities, because the police had much more leeway, and they had actually, lo and behold, moral support from people, and they weren't constantly put down like they are today. As a result, they could go to a drug lord or somebody who was corrupt and say, hey, this is my town, you don't do this. And they could use whatever means to knock them back. Mind you, they wouldn't get rid of them, but they would deal with them. This is the same reason that that prosecutors plead down offenses rather than going through the trouble with the state of having to prosecute all of these people for misdemeanor drug offenses and small infractions of the law. They say, if you'll plead to the bigger one, I'll get rid of all of these. It's dealing with the devil. It's kind of what it is. But my point in all of this with junk drawers and, point of diminishing returns here is that you're looking at life the wrong way if you're trying to root out all of your vices. If you're doing like John Smith in Man of the High Castle, you're seeking purity. Because every time you point, you've got 3 fingers pointing back at you. And you receive as you do. And this is why, along with Torquemada and Hitler and different people, when you try to have a pure society, the impurities start showing up. It's like, have you ever had a white cell phone case? You ever buy? I bet you didn't buy one. Again, I bought one, a white cell phone case. It didn't last a month because my oils from the hand start making it brown and yet first yellow, and then it starts to become brown, and then it starts to show if you get specks of dirt on it. It's the same principle. So how does this apply to you? How does it applies to your life because it speaks to your sense of minimalizing, and self-improving, both of which can be very good things, provided you remember this, what I'm about to give you right now. There are two states of reality. There is ground and there is flow. Flow is the state when everything is coming together. You get up that day, not only do you feel good physically, but you feel good emotionally and you feel good mentally. You have a lot of direction. You go to work, you do your day job, you feel motivated, you feel ready to take control, to optimize your life. You've got that energy, that flow of energy going for you. You impress your boss, and then even though the work day's over, you could keep working, but you choose to put all the rest of that energy toward your significant other, your kids. You go home, and then you go to bed, and guess what? The flow is gone. The next day, you don't feel as good. Maybe you worked out too hard because you felt so good the day before, but you're now in the second phase, ground. So flow and ground work together. And the ground is when you wake up and you say, don't even talk to me. I don't want to fast. I don't want to eat right. I just want something now. It's one of those days where fasting seems not realistic to you. It seems to not be an answer. And a lot of you spend a lot more of your time in ground than in flow, mainly because you don't recognize it when you see it. Each state leads to the other. So if you're the days when you get up and you just want to survive, you just want to eat, those are the gifts that make ground, that make flow possible. So let's say you get up and you say, okay, when am I going to have my OMAD meal? How am I going to wait for the time to roll around? Here I am. Let me go ahead and have my meal today. Rather than having what you want, ramen noodles, sausage and French fries, my personal favorite, and anything else, you say, well, now I'm supposed to go out and have something healthy. So you stress over that. And you've taken your day from a ground day, which is a breeding day for your good days to come, and you've turned it into a miserable experience. So you took something bad, you made it much worse. Instead, what you should have done is realize that it's okay to be good enough. It's okay to not eat healthy all the time. It's okay to realize that maybe today it might make sense to take a pain reliever for that headache that you have, even though by and large it's not a good idea to take pain relievers. So you see, this is the ground. One of the best things to do when you're on a ground day is to get up and do menial, repetitious tasks that involve little thinking. Trust me on this one. Get up. If you need to mop the floor, whether you're going to work or not, just put yourself to work wherever you are doing menial tasks. If you've got stuff at the office, like I do sometimes, that require very little thinking and a lot of just typing, do it. And do the longest activities you can do. What you're going to find is the less you think about it, the more quickly you're going to be catapulted back into your state of flow. The same way, the days when you're the hungriest, if you eat a little more, you'll find that you get catapulted back into motivation to fast again, motivation to stay loyal. And you'll have a day come along where you say, things are coming together, I have got this, and that sense of knowledge just falls over you as scales on your eyes, and you say, I've got control again. Well, in truth, you don't have control. This on and off is the nature of reality. Power on, power off, wash on, wash off. It's the same cycle. It's always been that way. But your days when you're in ground are your best days because you can always look forward to the days you're going to be suffering or the days you're going to be doing better. When I sold cars in the early 2000s, one of the best rules of a car salesman, people associate car salesmen with such awful characteristics, but they are strategists. So they realize that when the other salesman is selling and not you, instead of getting depressed about it, that's when it's actually time to be happy, because the more they sell, the more the people on your team sell, the closer you are getting to a sale. It's just a matter of laws of average. Think about that for those of you who are in sales. that puts you back into a state of flow. That puts you back into a state of prime. Try this. Live like a monk. If you're having a couple days where you're not feeling good and you have another day and you feel bad, instead of being miserable, start doing repetitious tasks. And here is one the monks do. Take a spray bottle and take a cloth, and when instead of mopping the floor, jump down, hands and knees, and spray each tile on your floor and wipe it. And then go to the next and do that. Not only will you be able to view the world from a totally different perspective, you'll see it like your 2-year-old sees it. But you will do a much better job cleaning the floor. And in that time, you will get the solace back to recollect. And you will reclaim your mental status. And you'll say, you know what? I'm ready again. I'm pulling myself together. You won't try to do it though. You'll be back into flow. The key with flow is to manage all of your energy. When you are living, you need to live with the law of inversion. And that's the last point here today. Live inverted. If you feel like working out extra hard, dial back. Don't do it. It's a trap. If you feel like eating a little bit more, don't do it. It's a trap. If you feel like eating less, have a little bit more. That's the key to inversion. And if you live your life by making decisions better, and by better I mean less thinking and more adjusting, more inverting. If you're debating which kind of car to buy and you're on the market for a new car, not many of us these days, right? But if you are, pick your second favorite. You'll find that you're happier with the color, you're happier with it in the long run than the one that you buy and you end up signing the papers on and taking home and realizing, I'm not happy with this. I should have gotten the gray one, or I should have gotten the red one. This is the law of inversion, and it's one of the big laws that govern your existence. This does not mean don't think, don't make good decisions, but it does mean, in addition to fasting, in addition to a strict 1 meal a day, which is already a very monk-like thing to do, that is what monks do, they eat once a day, you can optimize your strategy of perception, positive versus negative days, so-called, by realizing that making peace with your ground, with your days where you're not in flow, is just as important as being in flow. Go on long walks. The days you're most miserable, you are most depressed. If you have to be late for work, go put your headphones on, start listening to a good audiobook, start reading something, download a video, whether it's one of mine or somebody else's, and get inspired with knowledge, practical knowledge that tells you how to do something. And you will find that quicker than you imagine, usually in less than a day, you'll be catapulted back into your alpha status, your flow. And you won't be dragging. But remember, both are equally necessary. You can't have flow without ground, and you can't have ground without flow, because how can you enjoy your days when everything is coming together if you have no days where the opposite is true?